got back from work and I was just thinking that this is a good time to answer questions whether architecture school actually prepared me to work in an office. Hi, my name is Sara. I'm a junior architect at an office in Wrocław, Poland. I studied in KTH and QUB in Belfast in Northern Ireland and Stockholm, Sweden. And I got a few questions on my Instagram. Did architecture school prepare you to work in an office? And so today's the day I'll be answering those questions. And if you have any more, please let me know. Write them in the comment section or send me a message on Instagram. Okay, so question number 1. Did architecture school actually prepare you for the real world? My answer is yes and also no, and I'll get into that. So first of all, architecture school definitely gave me the skills I needed to do the tasks that I get done. Train passing, bear with me. Longest train on earth. Okay, as I was saying, yes and no, because basically, in architecture school, you do all these projects, you learn how to design, how to communicate your ideas, how to present them, and you basically learn the soft and hard skills that you need to basically execute a project in an office. However, we don't learn so many things that then come into play in an office setting, whether that is spreadsheets in Excel, whether that is listings of all sorts, like regulations and building like restrictions and so on. I mean, of course, at least in Belfast and Queen's University, I did have a lot of tasks to do with building regs. However, it's a whole other spiel in an office. I feel like it's a whole other world. And I feel like those skills were really lacking. Also, we don't learn much about, financial aspect of a project. We don't talk about budget. We don't talk about like those sort of numbers. So, although I feel like architecture school did prepare me very well, there were some skills that you kind of just have to learn along the way. And I'm not mad at the architecture schools that they don't teach this, because you kind of just figure it out already in the office. And when I was a student, I didn't understand that, and I thought like, I should already know all of the stuff. Why are we not learning about this? But it's impossible to learn everything. You have to just start somewhere and build up. And architecture school prepares you so well in designing and presenting and the sort of skills that you need to start off. So yeah, and it's insane, but after 5 years of architecture school, there's still so much to learn, whether it's from the business aspect, whether it is talking with clients, negotiating. It's so many different things that you just simply cannot learn in school without practical experience. So at the time, I didn't understand that, but with age, with time, you start to figure these things out as you go. Okay, question number 2. What surprised you the most when you started working? Okay, I think the thing that surprised me most is that some tasks are exactly like in architecture school. So I've been doing some mapping, some floor plans. I've been doing things that I genuinely did have to do in architecture school. So that's kind of surprised me almost, because I expected it to be like a huge jump and just kind of go into the deep end. But at least from my experience, offices have a good kind of strategy for taking new interns or architectural assistants into the team, and they kind of implement some easier tasks and then kind of build up as you learn. And the second thing is, I had no idea how much Revit, for example, like a 3D modeling program, like how many options that has. Because when I was in architecture school, I used Revit just a little bit. When I say a little bit, I think I did like maybe one project, that's it, in Revit. So I had no idea. And then when I went to the office, I realized I had no idea what that program is even capable of doing. And another thing that surprised me is how different it is to work in a small company versus a big company, because I did an internship in a relatively medium-sized 30 people, I think it was 30 people, in a team, and that was it. However, now I work in a company that has over 300 employees in different countries. And so the functioning of that company is so different from a smaller one. And I had no idea. And the thing is, that's another thing you just cannot learn in architecture school, no matter how hard you try. You just have to kind of experience it and see what works best for you. And I feel like I'm still figuring it out, because this big company, they have so much structure, they have so much like rules put in place, you know, how things are done. So it's very organized, which I love, but it's so different to functioning in a small company that has, you know, people do everything basically. And in a big company, one person has one specific role and does one like fragment of a project. So it's a completely different environment. And I love it because that gives you so much variety to pick from. But yeah, I think that was the biggest surprise. And also getting used to working a 9 to 5. I think I was really lucky with doing an architecture internship before I did an actual like architectural assistant position. And it was way more laid back than it is now, obviously. And I think that internship gave me a really nice introduction to a 9 to 5, because we had like a flexible beginning to the day, so you could start at either 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. depending on what your preferences are, and then just add the 8 hours to that. And also my lunch was integrated into those 8 hours, so literally I would start my day at like 8:30 and could leave the office at 4 and be done for the day. And also it wasn't really that strict with when we finished the day. It was just like, as long as you have your tasks done, you're done. But then obviously now when I'm working in a bigger office that's a little bit more, you know, like corporate feel, then you have a 9 to 5, and like you won't leave earlier. You have to stay to the very minute. And also a 9 to 5 that includes a lunch break, which means that when I start at 8 a.m., I still leave at 5 p.m. because there's an hour in between. So I feel like that adjustment, that it is the entire day, took some getting used to, but at the same time, it was so nice to finally feel like when you go home, you don't do anything. You don't have to, work-wise, I mean. Like, you don't have to continue working, because I don't know about you, but when I was in architecture school, if you were in architecture school, then you just work pretty much all day. Now, of course, I'm not promoting staying up late to do work, but there were days where you had to work overtime. And personally, I didn't take any all-nighters. You can watch my video about that. But I know that it just spreads, and there's always something to do, something to fix. And because architecture school is not an office, doesn't have work hours, you just tend to work in random times of the day. And your whole life is like consumed by your degree in a way. At least that's how I felt. Like my degrees consumed me. But anyway, yeah, so I guess in a good way, that also surprised me, that the feeling that, you know, I kind of felt guilty that I wasn't doing stuff for work. I had to get used to that. That, you know, I go from the office and I'm done. I can do things that are within my personal life, within my chores, what I need to do for home, and like just leave work at work. So that was a big surprise. Next question. What's one thing that school really got right? Okay, I think that out of the 5 years of architecture school that I attended, the best thing was critique, because it taught me to kind of distance myself from my work. That meant that when someone gave me critique on that piece of work, I wouldn't feel hurt by it. It's just like we're both objectively looking at this piece and how we can make it better. And I feel like getting used to that and getting used to getting feedback and giving feedback was just so positive, because now at work, I'm not afraid to be like, hey, I did this map, or I did this sketch, or I did this whatever, and I can ask for feedback and not get like anxious about it. Because no matter if it's going to be negative or positive, usually it's a bit more, you know, neutral. in most cases, but it's just instructions rather than like a personal attack. And I think that really was great in architecture school because you just learn how to give space, hold space, give space to the project and just make it better together with the team, with the teachers. So I think that's a really good thing that I still carry with me. I mean, people are a bit, divided about this, but I personally really am grateful that I did things by hand and then on the computer and then also like model making by hand as well, because all those skills came in handy both in my internship and now in my full-time job. Because in my internship, the company I worked at, they really enjoyed doing physical models or having physical models. And as an intern, I would be the one making those. So it was a lot of fun. And those skills I felt comfortable in. So because I practiced making models in architecture school, like these ones right here, you can follow my architecture account if you like. I haven't posted there in a while, but you can have a look at my work. So I made a lot of models throughout my architecture degree. But it really came in handy. And also I felt like I had a more wholesome experience and also a more wholesome or holistic education, because then I could also show off my skills, because not everyone is comfortable sketching, not everyone's comfortable doing 3D models. So like everyone has their niche, and if you have a wide array of skills, you just never know what will come in handy. And also I feel like just finding your own preferences was something that's really helpful in architecture school, noticing what you enjoy designing and what you don't enjoy designing. But also at the same time, I would say if you're convinced that you don't do housing or you don't do hospitals, you just don't like designing this particular typology of architecture, you might want to give it a go in an office anyway. Like, don't cross it off before you try it in an office setting, because it's a bit different designing a massive building or like something niche on your own in school. And it's a bit different when you're in person with a team with divided tasks and assignments and resources and help and assistance and advisors and all of that. So, I wouldn't cross it off if I were you. I wouldn't cross it off if I had a preference in architecture school. I was convinced I wouldn't like designing housing for some reason, and now I actually enjoy it and I find it interesting and fun. So you can also just try and keep an open mind, to what you like and dislike. Time for the next question, and that is, what's one thing school completely skipped? Okay. I'm gonna say, I think architecture school unnecessarily says that architecture is your life. Now, I did say just now, right, that architecture school consumed my life, right? Yeah, well, I wish it hadn't. And let me explain. I wish I had not been so overly scared of not doing work 24/7. Because the sooner I had started actually taking care of myself, finding hobbies, working on projects that are outside of architecture school, I found more motivation, inspiration. I don't know, it worked better, because obviously when you rest better, you work better. So it only makes sense that once I embraced hobbies and embraced life outside of architecture school, I know it's not revolutionary, but however, I found myself working better and getting better results. And so I think that's one thing that architecture school forgets, that people should, according to me, that's my opinion, chronically online. I wish architecture school actually, pushed you a bit more to stick to your hobbies that are outside of architecture school, because I think that if I had embraced filmmaking more, if I had embraced editing, if I had embraced like this whole social media aspect earlier into my architecture school, I think I would have made so much more progress way quicker if I had discovered that I am completely allowed to take breaks, if I had known that I don't have to spend so many hours in the studio earlier, I would have saved myself time, energy, and stress. Yeah, just I wish that was one thing that architecture school would fix. What would you do differently as a student knowing what you know? I feel like that kind of ties into like this previous question, and I would say I would actually stick to sketching. I kind of abandoned sketching after first year. I don't think I even sketched that much in first year. I'm kind of planning on showing you guys my sketchbooks from all of my years of architecture school and also my sketchbooks from my internship, because I feel like I only started to learn how to use them properly way late. And also, I didn't feel like I was confident enough, or I didn't know I was allowed to kind of implement the medias that I'm interested in. For example, painting, drawing, sketching. I totally could have been embracing those as like something I'm doing on the side apart from architecture school way earlier, because I think I only started using like my full potential in a way in my final year of my undergrad, because I noticed that, hey, I could in one project sketch, draw, collage, do like videos. I could do anything I want really, as long as it meets the criteria. So I think if I were to do architecture school again, I would probably get into a habit of sketching, and not just architecture, just getting in the habit of sketching. Because the last time that I've sketched for myself as like a hobby, as like for entertainment, was a very long time ago. And I wish I just kept up that habit, because I think I was a bit scared of doing that for some reason. I don't know. So I'd do that, and I think I would also intern earlier. I wasn't that like stressed about doing internships or getting work experience, because I always thought like, oh, that's going to be in the future, like I'm going to get it done anyway. I think I would do a few months here and there during the summer if I were me from like 4 years ago. I don't really regret not doing the internships, because I had lovely summers, and obviously like this is the time where you can take months off without any sort of repercussion. So I think I wouldn't do it any differently. However, if I were to do it again, does that make sense? If I were to do it again now, then I would intern. But since I did it the way I did and ended up here, then I guess I'm just grateful that I took the days off as well. I think it's just about getting a bit of experience and getting your CV a little bit more built up, because obviously the first few steps after architecture school are the hardest ones to get a job, to get into the business. So yeah, I think I do those two things differently. Okay, I have one more question, and that is, how do you feel about your work-life balance now? I think I guess I'm doing it. I don't know. I think it just came really natural to me after realizing I don't have to work after hours. I think I got used to that at my internship, and now in my full-time job, I just kind of accept it, and it's obviously, it takes some training to actually use your time after work in a way that would enhance your life rather than just sit and doom scroll. It's very easy to do that. But, I think it's fun if you start planning some nice evenings, whether it's even staying at home, but doing something that is going to spark a little bit of joy, Like, for example, I literally printed out some like kids coloring pages, because it's so relaxing to just like mindlessly color in, and that's way better than scrolling. So yeah, just I think it's pretty good now, because I just leave work at work. I'm really lucky that my team is so lovely, so I feel like it's not draining me entirely. Of course, it's a lot of effort to be in work 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. No, five. Thank goodness, 5 days a week. So it is tiring, but at the same time, it's not something I dread. And then after work, I mean, I'm in a new city. I want to explore. I want to see new places and meet people. So I feel like it's been really positive. And I think it's really fun to also just see what kind of events are happening in your city. it's just so many opportunities out there you don't even know. So yeah, I think it's been really nice. I've loved it so far. I think there's obviously opportunity for improvement. There are days where I just lay in bed and then I kind of feel regretful the next day because I didn't do anything or whatever. But I think as long as I get a good night's sleep and eat well, then the day's gonna be a good day. I think that's the most important. Yeah. Anyway, I think those were the questions. I would love to know if you're doing architecture school right now. Are you a graduate? Have you graduated one of the schools or attending one of the schools I went to? I'm so curious. I would love to know. So if you're anyone from QUB or KTH, hello. If you have any questions, please leave them down below or just message me on Instagram. It's right over here if you want to check it out. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!